And we should be live now. I hope. I need to make sure my stream's muted because I don't know what I'm doing. There we go. Welcome, everybody. My name is Avacyn. I am the community manager for Roll20, and we are here today to do a little Roll20 roll table hour. And I'm going to let the other people with me today go ahead and introduce themselves. And if you have any issues with our stream or sound in the chat, please let us know. Nolan, take it away.
I'm Nolan Jones. I'm one of the co-founders of Roll20.
I'm Steve K. I'm the lead developer.
So, as Stephanie said, we're roundtabling here, and the first thing I want to do is kind of get out as to why we're doing this and what's going on. I think first thing to cop to immediately is that since August, I think we've done a pretty poor job of talking about what we're doing. I think we've just been doing it, and that can be disconcerting to folks on the outside that don't realize exactly how much work's going on. One of the things that we got away from was we got away from doing named updates, which was a nice method of telling you what we're going to do then as we're doing it, and then kind of come back to, hey, here's what we did that time. I don't know if named updates are coming back, but I do think that we're going to make more of an effort to get that model of telling you what we're doing, or what we're going to do, what we're doing, and what we did a little bit clearer, and help folks, check out the change log and those sorts of things. Also, admittedly, we've been doing a lot with wizards, which is cool, but it's not what our core hope is in the long run. We want to do a lot of things for a lot of different systems. The other thing that makes this difficult, and this is something I can speak to as a co-owner of Roll20, is we haven't hired fast enough. You'll notice about a month ago now, we put out a call for 6 new hires, and I think honestly we're probably going to hire a little bit more than that, which awesomely we have the ability to do that. The only problem is right now is running through all of the applications and going from there. But I think we're actually onboarding this week 3 new people, and so growth is happening, and that'll allow us to do more of this stuff and talk. Apparently, we're super quiet. No, you fixed it.
That's old.
Oh, I'm catching up.
You're good.
Yeah.
Don't read the chat.
But yeah, so that's my 2-minute rundown on kind of where we're at right now. Is sorry, we've been busy, but that's not really an excuse for not talking to y'all. So that said, we've got about an hour here today, so we need to kind of get straight into questions so we can get as many as we can answered. I'll also be trying to keep an eye on chat. We don't really have time to take more questions, but I want to make certain that as we're talking, people feel like we're answering the questions that we've gotten. And so that's kind of the goal with doing this live, is that it's not just here's what we think with no one else chiming in. So Stephanie, you want to get the...
Oh, yeah. And we're also running through the questions kind of in order of the things that you guys upvoted the most in the question thread.
So we're... To be clear for anyone who was watching that was not involved in the forum process of this, we actually put out a post a couple days, 4 or 5 days ago or something like that, to the community, asking the forum people to let us know what they wanted to hear about, and then asking you all to also upvote what you liked. And as Steve said, we've compiled that into this little spreadsheet or PowerPoint over here. Over there? Yeah.
Over there? Yeah.
Wherever it is. So yeah. Am I reading? I forgot. Sorry.
Sure.
So our first question. So we were going to. Most of these questions actually are from subscribers. So that's really awesome, and we wanted to kind of call that out and thank you guys for doing that and showing us your continued passion. We hear you, and thank you. We're not going to tell you what everyone's subscription level is. We realized after writing it all down, it was a little ridiculous. So, but our first question, I got nervous because I don't want to do the names. It always screws me up because you said
Crane,
this differently.
Right?
Crane? Didn't we just?
That would be my guess.
Yeah, it's rain. Okay. Is anything going to be done about the suggestion graveyard? Steve's favorite words.
Yeah. Why?
So the suggestion graveyard, as it were, I'd like to combat that idea that we're not paying attention to it, that we're not doing things in it, because we actually have done quite a few things from the suggestions forum, just not the top 6 things. And so like the main things that we've been doing recently from the suggestions forum have tied into major infrastructural changes we've had to make. Recently, we had to redo our video and voice chat that's internal to Roll20. And at the same time, we did things like pop-out video chat, whispering, muting, video only, lots of features and polish there. When we had to redo our jukebox system because our relationship with SoundCloud ended, we had to provide a whole bunch of new, sources for audio content for your guys' games, and we came out in spades from your suggestions there. Almost every single one of the source that you guys wanted, we were able to get something either very similar to it or exactly what you guys wanted. We got gifting items to your GMs done in the last few months. We got the API one-click install as well as a gigantic API overhaul. So there's lots of things being done from the suggestions forum. It's just not in those top ones that are probably have the most visibility right now.
And so part of what's happened with the suggestion forums is that we understand that it feels irritating that one, something that's up top gets passed over. And we should talk a little bit about why things might get passed over. But secondly, I think that there's a feeling that the bottom stuff doesn't get seen. And that's not necessarily true either. So what happens here that kind of makes this feeling occur? One is that our curating system is anything that's particularly advanced right now. But it's also, I think overall as a resource decision, we go with the things that fit nicely with those necessary changes like Steve was talking about, that we've been going, as WebRTC became something that we wanted to pivot to and bring in internal, it made sense to go at the same time and look at all the suggestions that had come up in the past with video. And, as you heard him say, pop-out videos being a great example of that, being able to whisper in between players being a great example of that. And those have been things that have been high up on the suggestions forums for a long time.
And then I would just address the whole passing over idea. If we're not doing a suggestion high up on the list for a suggestion that's lower on the list, it's probably because it requires more resources than I feel like our development team can give it right now at the time to do it justice. And so in order to really dive into it, it would mean passing up on maybe as many as 2 or 3 other lower hanging fruit quality of life changes that we think offer more value than the shiny new feature that's right at the top of the suggestions form. And again, it's not that we haven't seen it, it's that we're having to make a kind of a tough judgment call because we have limited development resources.
That said, that doesn't fix the suggestions graveyard feeling. And
right.
So one of the things we're going to do, and we think it's funny because it's actually a suggestion that we got, is that we're going to try to change the way that the suggestion form looks by changing the default to the most recent interaction. So you're going to be able to see what's being talked about. I think the bummer that people are going to find in this is going to be that sometimes the things that you suggest aren't necessarily popular with the community, and this may highlight this more to you. So there is a negative to that aspect, but it'll keep it churning. That said, it doesn't answer directly why the top things there aren't being done. So drum roll, Stephanie, if you want to.
Yes. And you will always have the option on that change to set it back if you prefer the other way to view it. So
we're just going to move the default to making it the recent interaction instead.
So in that, we are going with Keith Curtis, and his question is, would you please go through the top 5 suggestions in the suggested forum and briefly discuss the reasons they have not, should not, or cannot be implemented?
All right. So number 1 was foreground map layers, and it's an idea we at Roll20 really like, and it's something we want to do well. So this is a lack of resources thing. It's a fairly large project because it's going to require an overhaul to a lot of basic assumptions we made with the virtual tabletop. But our core idea is if we're going to add more layers, why not add all the layers? Like a whole bunch of design programs allow you to create as many layers as you want in order to create the look and aesthetic that you want, give them their own properties. So that's the idea there. That's what our vision for what a system like that would look like. But it's a pretty large feature in and of itself, and so it's not something that we're going to jump into until I feel like we have the resources to do the whole overhaul of the VTT layering system.
Well, and I think even when we were talking about this yesterday in terms of discussing this again, one of the things we've talked about is as the initial stopgap isn't even adding tons of layers, but making certain that just adding one layer could be any of the existing layers. So in other words, you could get 2 token layers or 2 map layers, or just having that one. Because one of the things we have to consider is that we need this to be able to run to a lot of people simultaneously in a way that you would never want to try to do with a Photoshop where you've got 500 layers. But even if we just gave you one more layer and the option of choosing where it went, that's a powerful tool that we think people would get a lot of use out of. It's just getting to the point that we can make that as opposed to, oh, we're just going to add one more map layer. Having that versatility is something that's important to us as well.
So the number 2 suggestion is dynamic lighting integrated with a kind of a Fog of War, Warcraft 2 style. The major problem with that is it's completely incompatible with our dynamic lighting system as it exists right now. Right now, the way the kind of the underlying technology that works there is it's like basically imagine like a black mat that gets placed down over the battle map. It finds out where your token is and then does a whole bunch of lines all the way around it in a circle to figure out what it can see. And in that area, it cuts that out, right? So when your guy gets set down, the problem with doing a Fog of War style is it would mean doing that a million times, you know, all throughout the entire path, and us recording, you know, every position the token's ever been and cutting all of that out. And it's, you know, as some of you I'm sure have already seen, dynamic lighting can be tough on people's computers. Doing it at that scale, it's just not performant. It just can't be done that way. That said, we're seeing that it's a super popular idea. It's something that you guys want. So, you know, been kicking around ideas of maybe like a toned down version of that maybe works like on just the grid system that does it in block chunks. It wouldn't be as pretty or as refined, but might give that aesthetic, and there might be multiple options. But because we don't really have a good tech solution for it yet, we haven't, you know, really dove in and spent a bunch of resources on something that might just not pan out at all.
So the next 3 things on the list, creating custom sets of status icons for tokens, hovering to see token name and bars, and the size of distance measurement should scale with zoom levels, messing with the ruler settings. All of these are things that we would like to do. All of these are things that I think it's a question of when, in a much simpler way than those first 2 items. Those are easier to see the programming solutions and stuff we'd like to do. I think the only reason that it could feel grating that those exist where they are is that other things that were higher up on the list have been done since. And so, you know, I think one, we probably ought to get better about like making certain that people, I guess we have to toot our own horn better about, hey, we did something on the suggestions forum. But yeah, I think everything there in those 3 through 5 are stuff that we have that is penciled in on the roadmap in the near future, and something that we're talking about regularly in terms of which update this year are we going to get to it. So yeah, I think that all those things are in a place where expect to see those soon. Trademark. We just don't know. Yeah. the community manager cringe. But seriously, I think that all of those are things that, you know, we don't have to sit and make giant architectural questions as to when that happens. I think it's just when, in the order of all the other stuff that we're doing, those come out. So hopefully soon.
Next
Onwards to
the Many folks.
The mega question.
We had quite a few of our subscribers ask about the future of our Wizards of Coast products, including pricing, order of releases, more SRD content, more player access, D&D Beyond, and more. So let's talk about that, Nolan.
So the answer that everyone hates is non-disclosure agreements exist, and we can't really talk about it. But let's talk about it. So I think for our part, the thing that is easiest to point out is two of the people that we brought on this week are actually to help us get backlog elements with Wizards done. So we should hopefully see more of the adventure books released quickly. One of the reasons that it's been tough figuring out what product to do next is that each product has its own idiosyncrasies that cause problems. For example, Curse of Strahd doesn't work really well on a virtual tabletop because of the isometric map. And so we've been sitting there looking at it and trying to figure out what we're going to do with this huge, important part of that adventure set. Another thing that makes a how are we going to skin this cat? We would like to present player data in some different ways down the line. And so when we look at the player's handbook, we go, what exactly do we want to do there? So there's a lot of questions like that as we're looking at the backlog and trying to figure out what to do. And so it takes time for us to figure out what we think is solutions, present those solutions to Wizards, get approval for those solutions, and kind of go from there. So that's the big picture licensing question as far as how fast are things going to come out and what are you guys going to put out next. Sadly, it's a moving target. The other questions as far as pricing, I think we're going to continue to operate at a premium price point for the time being. The reason being, so if you take one of those books, like a 250-page book, we're finding it takes us a little over an hour per page to convert those books into something that works really well in Roll20, where everything is hyperlinked to each other, everything, all of the data for all of the creatures and stuff like that is entered in a way that makes sense and is easy to just get moving. The time saving to you, if you were to try to take a book and convert it, that we feel like those 250 some odd hours we save you and are paying for ourselves in man hours are valuable. And so I think we're going to continue to look at this as something that is a premium product.
And kind of to add what Nolan's saying, like every single product that we put out, we feel like it isn't just a digital copy of the product. It's not just the words in a different format. It's implemented into Roll20 where the dynamic lighting set up for you, the pages are separated for you, the encounters are pre-prepared, it's integrated with our character sheets and our, all of our different Roll20 features. So it's not just the paper product. You're buying something else that includes a lot of hard work from our team.
So going back to kind of the overall, because there were a lot of questions that are in this similar realm. There are a lot of big weird ideas being discussed too about ways we might present data down the line or things that we could do, or even other elements that Wizards has that we would like to play with that aren't just 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons stuff. It's going to take time to get any of that figured out, to figure out where we have common ground with them and what we want to do. We can't speak to any of it directly, but I would hate for the assumption to be that we aren't interested in anything but churning out basic middle-of-the-road 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. That is demonstrably false. I think the question is when any of that will bear fruit in public, and I have absolutely no idea. It took a long time for us to get where we are in terms of the 5th edition releases that we're doing. We just need that relationship to continue to get stronger, and you guys are the ones who help make that happen by talking to them more so, because we're super interested in a whole bunch of weird, odd things on our end and would love to get to them down the line. That all said, we love D&D, but Roll20 is not just Dungeons and Dragons. So next question out there in the world is that we had a bunch of questions from folks about what about non-Dungeons and Dragons licensing? Um, so we're working on getting more licenses. Contact publishers that you want to be working with us, because they hear that and they communicate that with us, and that helps move the process along. You got to remember that they are geared towards making books and getting those out in the store, and so it's a different thing for them to get into this realm. We would point out we do have some existing deals. 13th Age, Monte Cook Games, Kobold Press just released, what was that, 2 different 5e compatible one-shot modules. But figuring out exactly what we're going to do and how we're going to monetize it with these companies is a new endeavor for all of us. But it's definitely something that we're interested in, because we don't just play Dungeons and Dragons around here. The thing that I would love for you guys to know, that when I'm talking to publishers, the stuff I stress is, one, we need more game master training tools. We think Roll20 just needs more game masters, period. And so we really like things that help guide first-time users into systems, like feel comfortable with them. Secondly, we need more one-shots and dungeon delves. We know that our game masters are trying to get games happening quickly, and so having material that is easily used, integrated, and throw in, that's why we're doing stuff like the add-on system, so that you can quickly bring things into your game and go from there. And finally, that we need these things like yesterday. We really do stress to them that we would love to jump into this realm. It's just figuring out, the big question is, how much does Roll20 get involved in making the content for the other publishers versus them doing it? And that becomes a question as to money and them figuring out what's right for them and us figuring out what's right for us, and the models there that are going to function for the long term and make everybody happy. Which is, again, it's a moving target, and it's going to be different for different sizes of publishers. It's coming in terms of there being a bigger presence there. The question is how fast we get to it and what exactly it looks like, which actually rotates us very nicely into the next question.
So we had the last question, by the way, was Roman and Devlin M. Thank you for that. And next we are transitioning into Vince and Kevin with questions on compendiums for Pathfinder specifically, and we wanted to also talk about other OGL content.
So the answer to this is we want all your open gaming license, everything. So we are taking applications, team at Roll20, to basically get any system who's published their rules or has a rule set that is protected in a Creative Commons or an open gaming license. We're ready to get it into the Roll20 compendium to create. Right now we only have the Pathfinder and the 5e books, but we're ready to have books for every single game system under the sun. The major stumbling block to that is most publishers do not have that data in a structured format. And here's what I mean by structured. The data needs to be regular. So if it's a category, like say a spell, and then underneath the spell it is broken down with the same things on every line, the way we're importing it specifically is in a JSON format. You can find the specific format on our wiki.
Which I just linked in chat.
Oh, thanks, Nolan. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah. So if you want your game in Roll20, work with your friends, work with us. We will import the data as soon as it's in a format that we can plug into the compendium.
Sub-question that the guys had in regards to doing more with the compendium was if there was any intention for direct player access.
I was going to speak on that if you want to.
Okay. Yeah.
So to speak on that, we have put out a call in the past, and there is a forum post on that. I was trying to find that as well. And we are definitely wanting to have community editing support. And if people are interested in helping, they're more than welcome to reach out to us in that same way. The problem that we are facing is to go back to what Steve was saying before, is we really want to start with that structured data. Because otherwise you're literally having to build every single thing by hand, essentially. And we would prefer to have structured data import and then editors overviewing the information later, just to kind of make it a little quicker because we won't release it until the data is complete for the community. So, but we
It,
definitely want people. If you're interested, please email me.
in terms of player direct access to the compendium,
Is
uh,
that the next question?
it's
Oh,
a
that was that
sub
follow up.
question
Yeah, yeah,
of
yeah.
this.
I forgot.
I don't think that's something that we're looking at. I think the way that we're probably going to approach it, Steve put this pretty aptly when we were talking about it the other day, is the same way you'd share a book around a table. And the reason overall for that functionality is because we want to also continue building the compendium for licensed content, not just the open gaming license stuff. And so we're going to keep everything in this same format for the time being. That it's instead, how do you share it around the table instead of that directed player access from the tabletop? That doesn't mean that they won't be able to access some of this open gaming license content themselves outside of the tabletop, but inside the plan is that sharing element will come from the person who's running the game. Remember, you can promote multiple game masters. Next question.
Yes. And handouts are handy.
That's our
Stephen
hand.
L. says, any chance of GMs being able to someday add custom content to their campaigns,
And I think
compendiums?
Fendersky also has something along this
Oh,
line.
did I miss it?
Uh,
So
there's a lot of folks.
custom
Oh,
compendiums
you're
are
right. Yes, Finderski.
so custom compendiums are something that I personally, Steve K
has been talking about for
I've been talking about for a long time.
True.
I think it's the essence of homebrew, which to some extent almost every GM DM does, and we want the features of Roll20 to be just as accessible for your personal homebrewed content as your content. That said, it's a structural change to the way the compendium works right now that we have ideas on, but not the resources to implement.
Well, and here, pivoting back to the start of the conversation at the top of the hour, it's really interesting that this is not something that's caught on suggestions forum wise. So, like, we as Roll20 think this is a really good idea. This is something we very much want to do. The lead developer is sitting here telling you that it's a personal goal of his and has been for a long time. But there's not the community cry for it that we expect, and so that puts us in an interesting position in terms of figuring out how to prioritize it. Like, if this is something you guys are interested in, help us know that by using the suggestion forum and going to it and making it more clear to us that this is something we should prioritize. Because I think particularly for power users of the site, it makes sense to be able to add homebrew elements and stuff like that and have your own portions.
And just to be speaking from like a completely structural tech point of view, it is much better for your game to have your content in the compendium in a saved, basically outside of the game, that you bring in to your games when you need them, rather than having everything like 200 preloaded characters, because those 200 preloaded characters have to get loaded into everyone's computer every time you come into the game, and it's a substantial amount of bandwidth. It's heavy, it runs your browser out of memory. There's a lot of complications that are involved with having especially really heavy character sheets with tons of characters, tons of items, tons of spells, those types of things in your game. So having this stuff in the compendium, having your content in your compendium, and where you're only bringing it into this game or that game when you need it, is better for us. It's better for you. So I think it's a win all the way around.
There's we talk about a lot of around here barrier of entry in terms of getting you online for play. And I think it's something to remember that, like, we're going to talk about this again later, but you're in a web browser and you don't know what other people's computers around you are running at, and you may have, like, we have to pay attention. We have great internet and good computers, and we have to make sure we're paying attention to other things. And I think it's important to think about that with your players. And so anything that you can use, like Steve was saying, like the compendium, to lessen the load for everybody, is inevitably going to make your games better.
Yeah.
Are we on to the next?
Sure.
Gozer the Gozer. I did it again.
Yeah.
What is it? What out
No,
of
it's
the
good. It's Gozer. It's
Gozerian?
The
Gozerian?
Gozerian.
Gozerian?
It's Ghostbusters.
Go get your
I
Ghostbusters on.
hear you
Yeah.
guys. With all, it's been a long time. With all the licensed content and the majority of users playing one particular RPG, is Roll20 still committed to being system agnostic? Yes. Yes, we are.
Hell yeah.
So we prefer solutions overall that work better to make us a table as opposed to being a simulator for any specific game. Something we haven't talked about at all today in terms of licensing, but that's very much on our mind is board games, because board games are really going to push us to have those table features. And so we really need to get some of those to push us there to make certain that we're as system agnostic as we can be. And that is an ongoing conversation. I think the problem that we found when we're talking to people about board games is that they all think as companies that they want branded applications, that they want their own, this is my, to pull a game out of a hat, Candyland. They want Candyland, the application, because that'll work. But the problem is with every game, people have home rules. People kind of like the little mistakes we make as playing a game. And so because of that, we think that Roll20 really offers them something that's really, really cool to play board games on. We just haven't gotten the response yet from the licensing partners there. And so it becomes an ongoing conversation to try to get some of those over. But yeah, we have no intention to be, I think that there's a fear out there that 5th edition will overtake us all, and it's just not who we are. Yeah, the population for that game is growing in part because it's a good game, but we're still playing different games on Roll20. I think I saw you guys talking that you guys are going to be playing Savage Worlds this week, right? In your personal game, yeah. So yeah, we have no interest.
We're gamers, just like you guys. I mean, we all play lots of things all the time. Is the reality. This is just a big one, so it looks big, for lack of a better way to say it.
I mean, the second game ever play tested in Roll20 was Settlers of Catan. We played 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons was the first thing that we tried out in the system, and the second thing we ever tried was Settlers of Catan. And I don't think that there's anything different in terms of what our intentions are. I think that we got the Wizards license that everybody wanted us to get last year. And so there have been things there that we've been working on. And luckily for other role players on Roll20, a lot of the ground that's been broken with Wizards is going to help those other licenses get further along in terms of what we're able to do for them. But
and just to talk about it from a design point of view for the application, not like licensing deals, not modules, not add-ons, but Roll20, the virtual tabletop, there's no feature that we put out that is not going to be accessible for every game. The compendium is not exclusive to F20. It's not just Pathfinder, it's not just D&D. Even though those are the first ones we did because they're the most popular games being played right now. We very much intend, we want your Fate, we want your Powered by the Apocalypse, we want your all the games. And then sheet workers, they're not going to be systems specific. There's going to be no feature we're going to put in the application that is tuned to just work for one system.
I think that's super important. We do that with the development. If you look at the marketplace, we brought add-ons in for Tails, but we actually did it before Tails for other marketplace products. It was a feature that we added for several other things like card decks and things like that. So
and that's the sort of thing, getting out the information on that sort of, it's now you can sell card decks in Roll20, and that wasn't necessarily something you could do previously. Now, are there things that we as developers need to figure out in the next year to make better card sharing features happen in a game, or discard pile reshuffling and weird there's a bunch of odd elements there that different games require different things of. I was playing Pandemic in person the other day, and the things that requires of how you're building those two decks and how they're moving throughout people, there's specific elements there that need to be figured out. But the more that we do with card decks, the more we'll start to figure those things out. It's a process, but there's no intention on our part or desire on our part to just be Dungeons and Dragons. We do like D20s, we do like role-playing games, but again, from day one, we've been playing other things in the system, and there's no intention on our part to move away from that. I've often told people in licensing, I am an arms dealer, and I win when everybody is playing everything. So, yay!
I like it. Okay. We are moving on through to Lucien, and they ask, are there any architectural technical goals that you can share with us that might influence how we design our extensions to the platform? So to give you all a little background, Lucien is working on a shaped sheet, the shaped sheet, character sheet, and is a community character sheet contributor. And so the question is, what can our devs give us some insight on as to how we can think to the future?
So I touched on it a little bit earlier when I was talking about the compendium. It's that you have to remember Roll20 runs in a browser, right? And the browser comes with it a whole bunch of limitations, restrictions that might not exist in other platforms, but it also gives us a lot of freedom and versatility. So I would say aim for slimness, because while it might run great on your computer, or it might only take 4 or 5 seconds to load your large campaign with your character sheet with lots of attributes, that's probably not true for big swaths of people who use Roll20. It's great that we live in, all of us at Roll20 live in the United States. We all have fairly good internet. There's lots of our users all around the world who are not nearly as lucky. Their countries don't have as good as infrastructure.
Their country may be actively trying to block the internet, which is right. A thing.
Yeah.
And or they might not have very good computers that can affect certain things about how their browser functions. So just keep in mind that when you're creating something, just weigh the cool feature that you're trying to include on your API script or your character sheet, or even in your maps for marketplace creators, versus the cost of loading that asset in the very first time. And so the features value versus the cost of including it maybe as many as 200 times in any given game. So I would encourage people to think about slimness. I would also encourage people to think about forward compatibility. A lot of problems we have with all character sheets, the OGL sheet included, is we make some pretty big changes and it can break things. So think about if you ever had to replace or move or rename something in the future, how you might do it without breaking or borking people's games. And I think probably the original idea for the OGL sheet, why I did it in the first place, was because the community sheet, which used to be the only 5th edition sheet out there, was so large that for some people it was taking upward of 8 to 10 minutes for their campaign to even load. So I tried to create the OGL sheet to be something very different than the other 5e sheets that exist out there. Not that it has all of the features of the other sheets, but it's the one that's going to work on almost everyone's computer almost all the time. Yeah. That was the goal. So I had very different goal in mind than the authors of several of the other sheets.
Yeah, and I think that speaks overall to the architectural technical goals. I mean, I think looking as recently as what we've done with voice and video, the conversation is, how do we make it load for more people? How do we make it faster for more people? How do we get more access here and more out of it? I think there are times that people, myself as a creative party involved in this, we forget that Roll20 does all of this in Firefox and Chrome. Like the things that it tricks your browser into doing nobody else is doing out there to the degree and the absurdity that this program does. And so the challenge is to keep that running smoothly, slim, and be as sleek as we can make possible for as many folks out there. So that's kind of the
and it's kind of a double-edged sword, because we love the community. We think the stuff that you create is great. We want to keep facilitating your guys' ability to play exactly the way you want to play, right? We want you to have options. We want you to be able to use the sheet that you want to use. We want to have there be scripts so that you can tweak the game mechanics or things that Roll20 might not immediately support that are very like unique and specific to your game. But then on the same the other side of that coin is then creators can sometimes go really far and really push the absolute outer boundaries of what a browser can handle or what we ever expected a tool to be used to do. So we have to, those are design decisions that I have to make, is like when we introduce a new feature, what could a Roll20 user choose to do with this that might be really heinous to their game or to our servers, or basically try and find those end boundaries. We don't want to put artificial limits on you guys and your creativity and what you do on your game, but we still have to protect the majority of our users, from extreme edge cases.
I've been informed by the wonderful mods in the thread of the actual title my brain was looking for on Lucian, which was that he writes the 5e-shaped companion script. So I wanted to correct myself on that. So thank you, mods. Are we on to the next one then?
Sure.
So we have Brad and John K. Are there any plans to provide more features to pro users or features in general?
Yes and no, I think is the easiest answer. I think first off, we're pretty comfortable as a business right now with what we have behind the paywalls. We think that there's a good value at both the support level and the pro level, the plus and pro levels, in terms of what we have out there and what you're getting for your subscription. I think that you get a good value, and on the flip side, we get the resources to keep programming things or to even run the things. I think something that is sometimes forgotten as far as like the API stuff, to have that sandbox running costs money. To have those elements out there, there are costs associated with that. We're pretty comfortable with where things are. That said, we always want to improve the overall user experience. I don't know that there's anything that we're planning that's a shiny new, this is what your $10 or $5 will be spent on down the line. But I think for where we are at right now, and I'll also say for where we have been with this for, we're coming up on we're 5 years of existing, that there hasn't been an increase in the price of subscriptions in those 5 years, and there's been a huge increase and I think now we have gotten to probably most accurately 2.5 years ago, we got to the point where the subscription really was, hey, this is a really good value for what you're getting. As for what the future holds, there's no sexy feature that's sitting out there that is, yes, this is the thing that will go here to add value.
And to kind of springboard off of that, from a design perspective, I'm really focused, and you can see that by the fact that we're hiring a UI UX person as one of our first hires, to kind of focusing on the features that we do have right now and trying to polish them. And I know that's not what the people we were just addressing with the suggestion forums want to hear, but I think that the product that we have right now is really great. And I think most people's problems with the site at the moment aren't that we don't have feature X. It's that for 1 user out of 10, they have this problem on the site very regularly. And the thing is that 1 user out of 10, when you have 5 or 6 players on a game, means maybe every other game's affected by that problem. So it might be a rare problem, and there might be a workaround, but it's a pain in the ass. And I think that kind of last 10% polish is something that I really want to focus on in the upcoming year.
I think it
Um,
goes back to that barrier of entry again for us. Like we know that on the forums or on the looking for group tool that we need more people just all around, GMs, players, all of that. And the easier that we can make it for the new people, be it new to the technology or new to gaming in general, to come in and sit down and go, what is a role playing game? Or I love role playing games. How do I do it in Roll20? And they can do that without having to go to Wiki or go to the forums to look stuff up or find, any other way to find it. It's just intuitively there. I think that's something that we want to take our already a product that we already think are amazing and make it easier for that group.
I think somebody asked in chat, and I think it's worth addressing. Is there ever going to be an option for a lifetime subscription purpose? And I honestly doubt that that's something that we'll ever go to, because these programs, like browsers, are ongoing. The browsers are updated, and as we've seen, particularly in the last year, we've had to take on a lot of things that we never really intended to take on. So, an example, voice and video has become so much a part of the Roll20 experience that while we use third parties in terms of Google Hangouts and TalkBox to get it done, Google Hangouts is changing their API, and they're no longer going to be integrated with programs. And TalkBox became unsustainable for the amount of people we have. The great thing that's happened is that there's more and more documentation on the technologies out there to run voice and video in a browser. So we were able to take it on ourselves, but that's a thing that we're going to have to continually work on. And so there's not a way to say, this is what our the wonderful and horrible thing about a recurring subscription setup is that it's sustainable, that it allows us to plan long term and make things long term, but it is long term. You're entering into a relationship with us, but we take that very, very seriously. And I think we aren't always going to get that completely right. Again, I feel like as an owner, I've got as a co-owner of this, I've got an apology to make that we didn't hire as quickly as we should have at the beginning of the year, because I do think that some of the things that are happening right now are just growing pains of we could use more bodies doing some of these things faster, and we did not predict. For those who are unaware, we grew about 20% population-wise in January, and we weren't as ready for that as we could have, should have been. But that's the magic of recurring subscription. Is that means that as I get towards December this year, you best believe that I'm going to be hoping for and expecting a 20% population growth in January next year, and trying to make the accurate decisions there to house those people and help those people on board. So yeah, I think that's all the questions that we took from everything to run through today.
It is. But we do have some extra time, and there's a Google Doc that you guys should have because it was in our main chat. And if you want to open it up, you can look, and Suzanne, our wonderful brand manager who's in chat, hello Suzanne, has been curating some things that you all can decide what you want to talk about or not.
Well, Steve, if you want to grab from any of those, I was going to, because low-hanging fruit as part of today's conversation. Somebody in chat is asking, is Fanburst officially
Yes.
a long-term replacement for SoundCloud integration, GMs uploading their own audio track? Yeah, that's where we're putting support. Is with them. And actually, I think just as soon as this past week, we were in touch with them in terms of some changes.
There was a long-standing issue where they were, through their API, sending us partial files. So specifically, your Fanburst tracks would stop loading. But we've gotten the thumbs up from them that issue's been finally squashed. So there shouldn't be any issues with Fanburst.
One of the things that's been nice about them is they're really excited to be working with us in a way that SoundCloud, as they got bigger, cared less about working with anybody. So we've really enjoyed that and are hoping to have more and more cool things with them down the line. So yeah, if you haven't jumped in with them, would be our suggestion to you.
So I'm looking at this thing now. I know I just saw one that I can ask you guys about for sure, which is, Steve, could you talk about formatting options in our bio and text editors?
So our text editor is awful. I will be straight up. It was one of the very first things that got plugged in. It was a library that Riley, the original developer, found and plugged in order to get the site up and working, and it has received almost no support since then. We know it's a pain point. We know it's ugly. We know it's buggy. We know it has an okay number of features. But I feel your pain on this one. I use it all the time too, and it's not great. And if it's going to be changed, it's going to be replaced with something else, kind of in whole cloth. We're not going to try and fix the one that's currently in there. We're going to get a better version, and I would love to see some more functionality with bio tabs and with handout area GM notes. And I've had some ideas. I've kicked it around with the other developer, Phil, about what that would look like, what in the future would look like, and what resources we'd need. And it's that kind of how that would be implemented that we really want someone like a UI UX person in to help us make that easy to use and super functional for you guys.
We all use that on a regular basis and feel you very much for sure. Another thing to speak on, which would be about isometric grid options, because we kind of talked about that before on Wizards and why that's probably never going to happen.
So
or I shouldn't say that at this time.
The isometric grid is actually not that impossible of a technical challenge. There's even techniques and videos I've seen of people making it work that way even in our normal grid. It's just kind of a shifting of perspective, a shortening of one of the dimensions. So the kind of hacky workaround that you can do right now is kind of make it uneven. Do an isometric view is basically a diamond, right, where the square is longer than it is tall. So you can work around doing that yourself in our games right now. As far as like a fully supported, very common isometric view as being like an option in the game, that's something that we could be talked into. Again, show us your suggestion votes on how important a feature like that is to you.
That's a lot of math. Is the last time we looked at it.
Right, and hex grids that we already have in are problematic for a lot of the same reasons. A large hex grid pages suffer from a lot of problems, and I would love to have more complicated grids or give you guys different options, but there's also always the option of just turning off the grid and moving your guys to from hex from the isometric square to the isometric square. So
it feels good. Okay. Feature request, map vault like the character vault, so we can import export map into other games easily.
So you can already do that with the transmogrifier. Right. It's a pro.
Oh yeah, there was a free account note on there. Sorry.
Yeah. So I hear what you're saying, and then the character vault's also not free unless you have purchased a module, and then with the module you can import your characters into it. That kind of external storage, like storing things outside of a game, isn't the way Roll20 was originally designed to work, and so requires some infrastructure behind it. So when we've done it in the past, it's usually been to solve a pain point or a problem, but because it requires extra resources and like money and servers, it's also been a subscription feature in the past. I can't imagine a free map storage tool existing in the near future.
Cool. I wish there was a feature to bulk delete from the journal.
There is. You click on the item, it opens up a folder view. You can then right-click or left-click to select all of them, all the items you want deleted. You can right-click to select everything in the folder. If you right-click, you can delete all. It does a bulk delete of everything you want.
Give it a try.
Yeah, as a follow-up to that, we've also made some changes on our end because we've had some large bulk deletes that were messing up
Yes.
the overall, making the server chug, and so we did some things behind the scenes to kind of help ease that pain. Gosh, that was within the past month even.
Yes, that's right. So yeah,
So
we had some issues of where people deleted their entire pro library, you know, all at the same moment, and our servers had, having heart palpitations from it. So we've moved that whole bulk deleting process into kind of a background, behind the server queue that deletes them. But you guys shouldn't notice anything different. It should just immediately disappear from your games.
but hopefully not jam our garbage disposal
Right.
anymore.
Right.
I gotta try to decipher this question. Uh, Discussion and chat around this common use question. Why did they change it so when you play on Roll20 you always roll twice when you click from the character sheet?
Okay, so we're talking about the OGL sheet.
Yeah.
It is a holdover because Actoba, the designer of the 5th edition community sheet, decided that's how people would like it, and you could just pick the left result if there isn't an advantage or disadvantage, or you take the higher or the lower if there is. Why, when I designed the OGL sheet, did I leave that as the default? It's because what the community was familiar with at the time. But because I understand that's not how everyone plays, and I want you guys to play your game your way, that's why we created default settings for your game, including for character sheets. And now you can just go in, and every time you mark the setting, I want the advantage toggle. That's the way I personally like to play on all of my games. I set it to I set that as the default, and then every new character I make, every new NPC I make, automatically appears with that setting by default.
Can you talk to? Aaron is trying to tell me we asked the question wrong.
So the
Can you
question
speak back
is,
to the deleting thing, Steve? There's some confusion about is if it's in the journal versus the art library that they're doing this bulk deleting from.
Oh, okay, maybe I misunderstood the question. Yeah, I'm talking about the art library. So we're talking about, because the journal, so the journal tab for mass deleting, so like folders and handouts from there. Yeah, we don't have a folder view yet for the journal. And that's something that, as Roll20 evolves, we kind of do things piecemeal, and it ends up a little Frankensteinian in that we have, like, for example, we have folders. When we first did folders, we did folders for the journal, and then we got it into the jukebox, but we still haven't gotten it onto the page toolbar. So there's certain features that haven't made it to all of the places. And I hear you again that bulk deleting from that space would be useful, but in our experience, the number of characters, the number of handouts you have in your journal is minuscule compared to the amount of art assets you have in your art library. So that was a big pain point, which is why we put it in there. But if we hear you guys say we really want this in the suggestions forum, you give us lots of upvotes on that we really want the journal to have a folder view. We want it to have bulk delete, bulk upload kind of stuff. That's something that we'll listen to and we'll hear you.
And I misinterpreted the other question too.
Okay.
And that was it was actually about 3D dice and the fact that the 2 dice are rolled, but the only one is shown.
So that is only when you have auto rolling damage. And the reason is the way the roll template works is it rolls all of the dice, and then it just chooses what it's going to show you, right? And so it has to roll the amount of critical damage right at the time that the roll is made, in order to show you the critical damage if it exists. If you turn off automatically rolling damage, that disappears, because when the damage gets rolled, it knows whether you crit or not, based off of whether you hit. And it will show you just that. It will roll 3D dice for just that. And that's one of the reasons I created that whole system of rolling in the chat tab to give you results is because I personally love 3D dice. I use 3D dice, and I hated that requirement of when a roll is made, all the results that could be displayed have to be rolled at the time that the roll is made.
So
we are running out of time, and I just want to say, if you do have suggestions, like Fifth Live, your profile picture suggestion, for example, which I really like, take these over to our suggestions forums, please, and look for them first. Make sure that they're not already created. We want to make sure all the votes are going to the original thread, and otherwise, we are going to have to wrap it up because we are running out of time. I did want to see if you wanted to talk about the one last question from Grimsley about a standalone app, because I believe we have a pretty definitive thought on that.
I don't think that's probably ever going to happen.
Yeah, barrier of entry.
We may do some more native type stuff with tablet applications down the line, maybe, but that's a whole lot of new for us, and that would be a different direction than some previous things. I think there are just questions as far as what's going on overall with the Apple Store that are requiring us to have some of those conversations. But yeah, I don't think that that's anywhere that we're looking to go right now. We like being browser based and how easy it is for everybody to get access to us. So yeah, that's probably the direction. But I think having done this for an hour, we could probably easily do this. I think this is something we will be doing again. I'm not certain how soon. And I think that we're also having a lot of conversations about just doing some overall more Twitch content. We love what Adam does in terms of games played, but we've talked about doing things, maybe showing off some features and having conversations around them, or maybe even doing some more like reveal type stuff via live stream. All things that we're open to and talking about down the line. First and foremost right now, though, hiring. We'll see as we get some of those new folks on board and how they work out and what all goes on there. But, we need more peeps, and we're figuring that out. In the meanwhile, I would very much like, and I think one of the reasons we're having this conversation is that everybody would like their favorite thing to happen now. And a whole lot of people have a whole lot of different favorite things. Please be nice to staff as we figure out what all we're implementing in what order. I very much appreciate how friendly and supportive this community has been for nearly 5 years. Next month, it's going to have been 5 years that we've been doing this together. Yeah. And I still can't believe how lucky we are in terms of how friendly and just overall, helpful this community is to each other. And let us know the things that will help keep it that way. I think one of the challenges as we become a bigger and bigger social platform is that we see a lot of social platforms get less personal, more entitled, and entitled in the ways that they feel like they can fight with each other, and that's just okay because it's a platform. And we're not going to be like that. We want to be a place where folks we want to be your kitchen table, invite your friends, have fun, hang out, and be safe. And so that's really important to us and the sort of things that we're figuring out going forward. But somebody's asking if we'll do any sort of anniversary role-playing stream for that.
Tune in June 24th. Yeah. I was going to say, before I do that, though, Nolan, do you want to say goodbye, and we'll let Steve do it, and I'll do a things to watch out for, because that was my goal.
I think that is my goodbye.
Okay.
and thank you everybody for coming out and talking with us and giving us your questions, and happy rolling.
Yeah.
So yeah, Roll20 Con 2017 is happening. It is June 24th and 25th. Let me look at my calendar. We haven't actually published this live, but we're going to. And then Tails came out. So let me just make sure I'm right. You've heard it here first. It is, yes. So, no, it's Saturday and Sunday, not on a Friday this year. Saturday and Sunday, 24th and 25th. And we are going to do it a little differently this year. We're going to do 2 longish days instead of 24 hours just because it was actually really hard to stay up for a whole day. Neil, I don't know how you do it, Neil. And we wanted to make it a little easier on all of us and maybe have like sleep in between. So we're going to
Sleep's cool.
pack a lot of really cool content with a lot of really cool people from the our community and the Twitch GM community and players and things like that. We're going to turn dynamic lighting on for the free players again for a week. We're going to try and do more Dev Steve in the game, horror game, pickup games, I'm sure. And to speak back to what we were talking about before, I wanted to say too, keep an eye out on the forums. We are going to start doing a weekly update on what's going on around the Roll20 area so that you can get a little bit more insight into the small changes that get made on a regular basis around here. Which I think you all will like seeing. Hopefully we won't bore you with too much technical. I'll try to liven it up, but we think you like that anyway. So we'll bore you with technical. I'm just kidding. Anyway, so yeah, Roll20Con's happening. New awesome stuff from us. We really, really do appreciate you guys coming out, those of us who joined us live, and to anybody watching on YouTube, thank you for watching. If we didn't answer your questions from that forum thread, we're going to go ahead and transcript these answers plus the stuff we didn't get to in an easy-to-read format, link everybody in the forum, so keep an eye on that. It's going to take me a couple days to put that together, but once this YouTube video goes up, you'll also have that link. So thank you very much to everybody, and thank you to Steve and Nolan for joining us, and to our people in chat. Thank you very much. Have a
Thanks, man.
wonderful day, everyone, and we will see you soon.